Nice.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to adjourn the meeting at 7:05. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes.
All in.
Pardon me, we're having some technical difficulties. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:05. And just to let people know, we are having some technical difficulties at the moment with the Zoom for public comment. What I'd like to do is get the meeting started we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll, with the committee, have a discussion about how best to handle public comment while Tom does some work on possibly getting the Zoom link up. And I invite all who would like to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the citizens' comments, and my understanding is that there is a problem with the link that is currently on the agenda. And we are having difficulties getting that fixed. So I'd like to, I think at this point, we are trying, I'd like to look at the committee and make sure that we can create something that feels comfortable for people. I believe that we are trying to create a new link and provide it in some public way so that we can get that up. Do other people have thoughts or concerns?
Could we go back to the public comment?
Yeah.
We absolutely could do a few other things and come back to the public comment. I'd like to get that Zoom link up as soon. Oh, yes, Tom.
So I did.
Can you talk into the mic?
Yep, I did click on the link. For some reason, it did let me in. So that means the meeting is started, and I have people that are entering now. So
Awesome. Okay. So
apologize for the confusion, but I was not able to open the meeting. So
all right. So I guess our initial so we'll give people a couple more minutes because it seems like the link has only just begun to work. So we'll give people a couple more minutes to gather in Zoom if they would like to. So for those of you for those of you who would like to, you can get ready to raise your hand in the Zoom. I should let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded and is being live streamed on HWCam on YouTube. We will hear comments from anyone in person, and we also will hear comments from anyone on the Zoom link. After public comments, we will close that Zoom link, and anyone who wishes to can continue to watch the meeting, as I said, on the HWCam live stream. All right, Tom, you think I'm ready to give my little spiel about the comments? You think people are coming in?
I've had 2 people enter.
Great.
So the link is working for other
Wonderful, thank you. So any citizen who wishes to speak, I ask that you would identify yourself by name and address, and we would we will ask you respectfully to limit your comments to 3 minutes to present your comments to the committee. As always, I want to let everyone know that we really appreciate public comment. It is valuable and helpful to hear from the public at all times. If you would like to be recognized in Zoom, if you could raise your hand. All right.
If anybody wishes to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom.
Tom, do we have anyone who wants to speak?
I have nobody with their hand raised.
Okay.
I'm putting it in the chat again.
Okay, great. Anyone in the audience? Does anyone have a public comment? Okay. All right, Tom, we'll just make sure, since we had a little technical difficulty, make sure, and then we'll get moving.
one last call. If anybody wishes to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Otherwise, the meeting is being streamed on YouTube through HWCam and through HWCam cable access.
Okay, thank you. Again, those of you who are on Zoom, the public comment portion will be closed, and you are welcome to join us via live stream on HWCam. Okay, next on our agenda is the review of school committee protocols. We're going to be doing this at each meeting in small chunks, just to keep those protocols front of mind. And this evening, I've asked Michelle Horgan to read 2 of our protocols to us.
Okay, thank you. As elected members of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Number 3, the school committee will establish a vision, create policy, approve a budget, and assure accountability to sustain continuous improvement in teaching, learning, and facilities. Members agree to leave the day-to-day operations, including business transactions, to the superintendent and staff. Members of the school committee recognize that authority rests only with the majority in its decisions. Number 4, school committee members will channel requests for information, reports, and data through the superintendent and the school committee chair rather than to staff. The superintendent will ensure that each member of the committee has equal access to this information in a timely manner. Recognizing the importance of proactive communication and avoiding surprises, school committee members will, whenever possible, contact the school committee chair and/or the superintendent in advance of a meeting if they have questions or concerns about an agenda item, or will ask the chair at least 48 hours prior to a meeting that an item be placed on an agenda.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Michelle. Thank you. Okay, next up we have the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items from the consent agenda that they would like to have held?
Hold.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anna.
I'd like to hold the executive session minutes from June 16th and August 19th.
Do you mean August 19th?
Yeah, August 19th.
Okay, I thought I
sorry.
heard 15th.
No.
Okay.
I'd actually
Anyone
like to
else?
hold all of them.
Want to hold all the executive session minutes? Okay. Okay. Jen, do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written, except for the executive session minutes, which are on hold.
Second?
Second by Michelle Horgan. All those in favor? That's 6 in favor. The motion is unanimous, and the motion passes. Anna, you held 2 of the minutes?
Very small Scrivener's errors, but your name is misspelled and Mary Beth Banyos' name is misspelled on the 16th, and your name is misspelled again on the 19th.
By you, I assume you mean me, and I'm embarrassed not to have found
I'm sorry, Miss O'Leary, your name has been misspelled.
I'm
on these.
embarrassed not to have found that on my own name. Okay, thank you.
I have no substantive concerns about the minutes.
Okay, Michelle Bailey?
I just felt that it was important to hold them to provide clarity as to what we're doing, because it's unclear from the agenda if we're approving them or if we're approving and releasing.
Thank you. So Michelle brings up a good point, which is typically that we might be a 2-step process. And the reason we put them here was that, and the reason that they're not put in an exhibit on the agenda is because until the minutes are approved, they are confidential. And so we couldn't put them on the exhibit to be approved. And the reason they were ready, but the reason that we are doing it today is that Vinnie Leone requested some minutes that he needed for some paperwork. And so we needed to get them done in a more timely manner rather than, does that answer that question?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are we approving them, or are we approving them and releasing them?
I believe we can do it separately. They are, in my opinion, they have been reviewed by council for any needed redactions, so they would be ready for release should we choose to vote on that.
So that should be clear in the motion, and it was not clear from the consent
Thank you.
agenda.
Okay. Jen, were you able to hear that?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so Michelle is just stating that we want to make it clear in the motion that we would be looking not only to approve, but also to release the minutes, because typically that might be a two-step process, but we are prepared to do that, correct? And just to clarify, Jen, you did, correct, Naomi did review them, correct?
I did hear you, yes.
No, I'm just saying Naomi did review the minutes, correct?
Yeah, she did, and she approved them.
Jenny, you ready to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just trying to make Anna's changes.
Anna's name on the 19th again.
That screensaver is kind of
Got it.
frustrating watching the traffic.
Yeah, it's not relaxing.
Okay.
Okay, Jen.
I move that we approve the executive session minutes with the changes mentioned by Anna Seizik to be released.
Second?
Second by Michelle Bailey. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, and that is 6 in favor, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Okay, and Superintendent Tracy, I think as your first order of business as superintendent here at the meeting, are you going to introduce Becky Bonifant regarding the CPAC, or is she just stepping right in?
No, actually, we have Stacy Busick with us here this evening, who
Oh, okay.
will do the introductions.
My mistake, I'm glad you're here.
So I'd like to introduce Becky Bonifant. She is one of our co-chairs through the previous school year for CPAC. Her, along with Lindsay Whitman, who's not here tonight, co-chaired the CPAC and have been instrumental in helping to renew the CPAC, which was kind of stagnant for a couple of years. And so she's going to talk about what CPAC is and some of the great things they have done over the past couple of years. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to put the presentation up, or I can also do that if you want.
It's not gonna let me open it.
Be able to see it from the screen.
Oh, it's okay. I have some notes.
You have notes.
Yeah, so I'm good. All right. Hi. Thanks, Stacy. As Stacy mentioned, my name is Becky Bonifant. For those on the screen, I'm a Caucasian female standing behind a podium in a blue dress. I'm here as the chair for the CPAC of Hamilton Wenham. The CPAC is the Special Education Parents Advisory Council. I haven't been in front of the committee since the 2019-2020 school year, so just to introduce or reintroduce anybody not familiar with the CPAC, I just wanted to super quickly kind of go over what it is. So it's legally required of every district in Massachusetts. Most other states where it's not required, they do still have it because they've really found the worth of the group. So it sits under the school committee just as an advisory capacity, and it follows public meeting law. The membership is open to parents and caregivers of students with disabilities, as well as any other interested party, which is a change to the bylaws that we made about 2 years ago. So even if somebody no longer had a student in the district, they could still participate in the group if they were interested. It represents all families of children with disability. So different than a PTO or a friends group, we're not really focused on just one school. It represents all schools and even out-of-district placements. The intent is to encourage understanding, acceptance, and inclusion with students with disabilities, advising the schools of any unmet needs, helping to develop and evaluate special education programs, and act as a trusted source for parents who need information and support. So for the goals, so this is sort of a look ahead. The monthly meetings are already up on the district calendar. The intent is really a third Tuesday of every month. Sometimes that changes a little depending on where vacations land. So the monthly meetings, the first is next Tuesday, and it's at 6 over Zoom for anybody that would be interested in attending. The required annual Parents' Rights Workshop will be in November. It's going to continue to be over Zoom. Within the district, an email went out to survey participants of really what presentations they would like to hear. This is something that I did, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and we kind of have been working off of that for presentation topics since then. We exhausted everything that people told us last time, so we surveyed them again for this year. I've already had 49 responses, and so the highest right now looks like managing behaviors, anxiety, and community resources. So I'll look to have those 3 for this year in addition to the Parents' Rights Workshop, which needs to happen annually. I think the biggest thing is sort of continuing to market our existence. People have sort of been stumbling upon us. Since I wasn't able to go into schools last year, I think any opportunity to go into schools during events, to sort of introduce ourselves, similar to like the Ed Fund, just so people are aware of the opportunity to participate. Stacy had also recommended in a meeting that we had, I think 2 weeks ago, that teachers were doing a book club around neurodiversity, I believe was a recommendation that she had made. So would there be an opportunity for a guided discussion on topics like that with parents? So maybe that would be a new opportunity for the CPAC to kind of look at. I think that's it for that one. All right, so looking back. The most recent in the last year presentations that we had, and this was as a result of COVID, supporting your child through anxiety and trauma this year. Executive functioning was something that we did at the end of the year. Understanding the IEP, and of course the annual Parents' Rights Workshop. The website now sits on the district site. So before, if you went onto the district site, it led to a broken page. So now if you go into district information, and student services, you can find the CPAC there. It has all the contact information, it has our agenda and minutes, and it also has uploaded presentations from last year. So we'll continue to kind of keep that updated as well. I think that's the biggest. Stacy and I meet regularly. And the last, while I'm here, if there's any questions that I can answer for you, or anything that you would like to, questions or opportunities that you wanted to share.
Thank you, Becky.
Yeah.
Okay, questions? Anna?
Thank you very much for all of that. Maybe this is because I'm newer to the committee, but just having you come and speak to us about what might be going on within the parent group.
Sure.
Has it been past practice that you come like on a quarterly basis or some regular interval to tell the committee what are the thoughts and concerns about parents within the CPAC?
Yeah, I think we could definitely look at, as I mentioned, didn't come at all last year, and I had come, I believe, once the year before that. So I definitely can come with more regularity if that's of interest.
Definitely.
I believe in previous years it was twice a year. There was the beginning of the school year and end of school year. In the past, I believe it was twice a year. At the beginning of the school year as an introduction and setting the goals and purpose for the year, and then at the end of the year, kind of a wrap up and also acknowledgement of, previously it was staff.
Can I say something?
Julia?
I would also echo, I would love to hear more than just twice a year from this group, but also I'd really encourage you and the members of the group to join the DEI working group, because I think that, you know, having disability and that kind of inclusion is also incredibly vital for our DEI goals. So I would love to see representation from the parents group in that task force.
Thank you. Other questions? So I have a quick question. When you mentioned a number of different presentations and workshops that are going to be open to the group, are those open to, are they presented just for the CPAC members, or are they?
Yeah, so great question. We hold our standard monthly business meetings, and then we also have kind of more casual conversations, especially pre-pandemic we were doing it. They were mostly held at people's houses. We were kind of meeting at the library to have more casual conversations. To be in the more casual conversations, people had to opt into hearing from our mailing distribution. For any of the monthly business meetings or the presentations, the district is very kind to send out all district emails. So it's available to everybody.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Questions? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I just think we need to acknowledge too, there are other members on the board. I mentioned Lindsay Whitman, who was a co-chair, and she is going to be treasurer this upcoming school year. And Kristen Crockett has been our secretary, and Nancy Waddell was our previous treasurer. So I just need to shout out to all of them for all of their hard work over the school year.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you and all the hard work to put that together. Thank you. Okay. So the next item is a vote on a potential vote on a vaccination requirement. We discussed this at the last meeting, and we got some really good questions and information that people wanted ahead of this conversation today. And I don't know, Eric, if you want to discuss and I have some information, and I know you had some also. Would you like to start with the information? I know that's in the memo.
Sure, I can kind of review it for everybody. I did, as several members asked, reach out to a number of people within our medical community, both the school district medical community and also the board of health nurses. And their collective opinion is that a required vaccination for all school departments and staff is the safest route for everyone. They all came, in separate meetings, they all came to the same conclusions as we talked about it. The boards of health were looking for a formal request, and I could have done that, but would not have had the information in time for this meeting. And then the bigger piece, I think somebody asked, I think Mrs. Bailey asked last meeting, what would happen if an individual has been diagnosed with COVID? Would they be eligible for the vaccine? And the answer is they would be eligible after day 10 or when their symptoms subside. So their symptoms could last to day 12 or 13, but that would be monitored by medical professionals before they could receive their first dose. And then there are some things to consider in talking to the leadership team and talking to the HWEA, and other union reps. Staff may request to take a leave or to resign their positions if required to be vaccinated. There are strong feelings about that with people. And the concern on the district side is we still have a number of open positions that are really hard to fill right now. Teachers' assistants positions, substitute positions, and unrelated to the district, the bus company is also having difficulty hiring enough bus drivers to manage the routes. Bus driver impact would become an issue if it were mandated. I guess we'd have to talk about how we would require a subcontractor basically to hold their people accountable. And the current data is showing that there is some increase in the communities, both Hamilton and Wenham. And then in talking to each of the representative presidents, HWA, Nick Rustino, he had surveyed his members, and 78% of his members do support a vaccine mandate. And then in talking to the ASME president, Frank Serena, he had started to reach out to his members and talk to most of them at the end of the day on the Friday that I posted this information. And he felt like it was not fully backed, the requirement, although he felt like a number of people in his group were vaccinated. So I went to the Ask Me website and looked for their kind of overall statement. I put it in this memo. Delta variant has brought a new sense of urgency to crushing this pandemic, making vaccination more essential than ever. So that's the information I gathered off of the last meeting's requests.
I just wanted to add, I don't think you mentioned, I spoke with the Lisa Heights, who represents the office personnel. You didn't mention that, right?
Nope.
And I received a few emails. It was, I actually received specifically 4 emails. 3 were in support or neutral. One said they are fully in support of vaccines but concerned about a mandate. So that is the feedback that was, I believe somebody asked for the office personnel. So I guess before Eric and Mary Beth and I, and then in consultation with our secretary, Jen Carr, I did create a draft of a potential motion that I would see as, we could use that as a structure for this conversation. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions regarding the information that you just got, which I hope answered the questions that we asked last time? Michelle Horgan?
Thank you, Eric, for those comments. In one of the exhibits, you have the percentage of staff vaccinations broken down by each school. And I don't know if this is in violation of HIPAA for some staff members that aren't vaccinated, but looking at it, we're 9% that's not vaccinated at the high school, less than 2% at the middle school, less than 5% at Bucher, 16% at Cutler, and less than 5% at Winthrop. Has anyone offered an information session with staff members about pros and cons of vaccination, or had conversations with them about why, with our medical staff, why this is something that's important working with children?
I think it would have probably been on a more informal basis, and talking to our lead nurse, Leah Tabenkin. She does have those types of conversations, both with staff members and parents and students. Sometimes just kind of when they come to ask questions, what about this, how does this work? Generally, people go to the school level nurses first, and then if they don't have information, they'll go out to the town nurses and try and dig out that information. But most of it is probably informal. That would be my honest guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like over the last couple of months, when you hear from people who were hesitant and then they did get vaccinated, it's typically a personal connection or getting information from someone they know. So I'm just wondering, if something could become available in a more formal setting. Maybe that's not the right approach, but just to say to the people that aren't vaccinated, this is available to you to ask questions and do more research. It's just.
Sure, and that's certainly something we can put out to the entire staff. And just point them in the direction of their school level nurses. Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who else had a question. Jen, did you have a question?
I was just wondering, before I make this motion, can we get some date in the actual date line spots?
Sure, I was actually thinking that could be part of the conversation. So maybe we'll go ahead and, unless, Anna, did you have a question on the information? Nope. Maybe we'll go ahead. Superintendent Tracy, would you put up the proposed, and maybe we can have a motion and have a discussion. Oh, that's a little small for me.
Yeah.
So my hope again was to, this is a potential motion, and my hope was to have a discussion, a structured discussion. You'll see that there's 2 blanks in the motion right now, and so I think Jen's point is perhaps there need to be a discussion regarding potential dates. I already have a question regarding, and this is what I thought Jen was going to ask, actually, regarding the bus drivers. This potential motion, the word is employees. In your view, Superintendent Tracy, would that be, they are subcontractors, correct?
We contract with the bus company. We don't employ
Okay.
the bus drivers.
Okay.
We contract with the bus company.
Do we know if the bus company has a vaccination policy, and if so, what is it?
It's a great question. I do not know.
All right, so I guess, so my reason for leaving those dates blank is, and maybe it's problematic, but I guess I'd rather have a discussion about what the dates might be so that we can put it into the motion, rather than, yeah. So, as you know, if we were to mandate a vaccine, there are, we have 3 potential vaccines. 2 of them require 2 doses. The longest is a 28-day gap. And I am certainly not a medical professional. That's my understanding. So the longest is the 28. Jen, you look confused.
28-day gap.
Between the first and the second dose.
Both Moderna and Pfizer are 14.
No.
No,
Moderna's 28, Pfizer's 21.
The longest.
Right, so I was looking at the longest, which is Moderna.
The recommended is 14, but the longest you can go is 28.
Right. So I'm just giving that as some information so that when we're, hypothetically, if we were to fill this in with the dates, that would be important to know that if we say that you have a certain number of days to get your dose. Okay. Anna?
I have 2 sort of questions. Instead of trying to pinpoint a second dose by a set date, because there are different date windows, could we make it something that says, and a second dose within the parameters set forth by the maker of the vaccine, or something that refers back to the...
We absolutely could. That's part of the structure, right? So your question is, rather than picking the second date, the challenge of that, and we absolutely can do, the challenge of that, and I would ask the superintendent what he thinks. The nice thing I would imagine about having the date for the system is that there's a date, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's kind of that due date, and it can be 30 days if you're looking at the 28-day vaccines.
So it would be better to have a set date just for documentation and enforcement purposes?
And then by the end of that window, they would essentially upload their card into our SNAP system. We have the capability to do that.
Okay, so could we say something then like a second dose 1 month later? And my only question there is, someone might have extenuating circumstances, they have a cancellation, they get sick. Do we need to add a clause that says deviations only approved by the building administrator or by the superintendent or something like that, in case someone had, let's say you have a scheduled thing and then you're sick or your kid is sick, or...
So this is a great question, and I will see the final line there is the superintendent will be tasked with implementing appropriate procedures to implement and enforce this mandate. It's a question as to whether that would fall under that if someone had,
And then the other thing, before we move on entirely, I want to go back to the bus drivers.
I can't hear you.
I want to go back to the bus drivers for a minute. So Salter drivers are not our employees, they're subcontractors. Remind me, in the buses right now, they have to wear masks, the drivers have to wear masks, the kids are wearing masks, and the windows have to be down 4 inches, is that right, at all times? Or something to that
It's at
effect?
least 2 inches. Every other window has to be down at least 2 inches, but most of them are open much more that I've noticed.
Okay. So the buses are breezy, would that be an accurate statement right now? Okay. Legally, do we have any authority to order Salter to force their employees to vaccinate? I would feel like we don't unless it's written into our contract.
My honest opinion, I think you'd be on a slippery slope. I don't think that would be something we would want to do.
Okay.
Because then you're looking at, then you're looking at other contracted workers that we hire, then you're going to start, okay, what about this one, and what about this one?
Right, that's why I asked the question. Okay.
So at this point, does it feel like it makes sense to have a motion get made and we can then debate, and if it needs to be edited, we can still do that?
Do we have a date?
Yeah, we need to pick a date. We might,
Ask, why are we having 2 dates versus just, this has to be done by X?
Yeah.
we absolutely can do it that way, Michelle. That's part of why I really put this as a discussion, because I modeled this off of a couple of different, so absolutely. It certainly could be.
I would propose Thanksgiving, whatever the Monday is after Thanksgiving.
Michelle, can you say that?
So I would propose whatever the Monday is after Thanksgiving.
To be completed.
The Monday after Thanksgiving?
That would be November 29th.
To be fully vaccinated. I like
Be
that.
complete. That would be November 29th. I will say again, I proposed this for a structured conversation, and yeah, it's certainly a date. Does anyone else? I mean, we can make the motion with that date, and
Just coming up with a date to move the
Yep.
motion forward.
Yeah,
No, exactly.
I agree with
Yeah,
that date.
thank you.
So the window for Pfizer is 28 and Moderna is 21, is that right?
It's the reverse. Moderna is 28, but yes.
So if we were to go Monday, November 29th, that's almost 2 months. It's more than 2 months from now?
Wait, I have a question. Could we just move, because I'm hoping that people are adults. Like, could we just move that everyone comes back fully vaccinated by the Monday after Thanksgiving?
I think that's what Michelle Bailey was saying.
Oh, no, okay. But so you didn't have a start date, you just had an end date?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's what she was saying. Yep.
I think that's the best way to do it, but I'm open to it.
And what I was hearing, if I'm interpreting it correctly, is I'm hearing maybe Anna saying that maybe that date feels like a little bit too long. Was I interpreting that correctly?
You are interpreting that correctly. But the only reason I say that is that, it used to be that there was a hard time getting vaccines and there was a wait and you had to make a schedule and it was, a free-for-all at the CVS site, et cetera, et cetera. Now they're pretty readily available. So I feel like 2 months to me feels like kind of a long time. But that's just sort of an arbitrary gut feeling. I mean, I kind of feel like I would go more like 6 weeks, like maybe, but then again, and this is just thinking out loud, we know that some people have side effects, especially after the second dose, and we know that Thanksgiving is the first sort of extended break that we're going to have. So as a practical matter, if someone's waiting until they don't want to have to take time off work or they're worried about it, that's a predictable time that someone could get vaccinated, before Thanksgiving dinner and be sick and then come back to I think that's a humane response for people being practical, so.
Let's get a motion on the table. So Jen, are you willing to make a motion, and we can always,
Sure.
all right.
I move that all Hamilton Wenham Regional School District employees are required to receive a dose of an FDA-approved or emergency use authorized COVID-19 vaccine by November 15th, 2021, and a second dose if required as part of the vaccine regimen by November 29th, 2021. This policy is subject to all documented legal exemptions. Employees who are granted exemptions shall be subject to additional mitigation strategy. The superintendent will be tasked with implementing appropriate procedures to implement and enforce this mandate.
Well, I think what we wanted was for them to come back, because isn't it a week after your last shot, your second shot?
So
It's
we
a week
didn't,
after.
we didn't get a second. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's good, because we're going to discuss it. We're going to edit, I think. So I think what we were shooting for was just having one date. So perhaps employees are required to,
We do it on here?
Dana, if I
Be
may, can we
fully
say-
vaccinated.
We
Be
require
full-
employees to be fully vaccinated by November 29th.
right, Jen?
Based
And
on
I make the
state
point
requirements.
that if they haven't received their first shot by November 15th, at least we have like some warning. Like, if we say November 29th is the last day, and all of a sudden we lose 10 teachers on the 29th, wouldn't it be better to know that we're going to lose 10 teachers on the 29th on the 15th?
So I could answer that. While not finalized, my union has open negotiations. And the potential date for required vaccination is October 2nd. But the superintendent put forth a procedure which required us to submit proof of either vaccination or an appointment by September 13th. So that provided the early warning signal, but that was not in the policy, nor in the memorandum of understanding, but it was in the operationalizing of the procedure.
Right, and it sounds like that would fall, again, under the superintendent being tasked with implementing appropriate procedures
Right.
here. Okay.
Why is that a hard word to say?
Okay. All right, so since we didn't have a second, don't have a motion yet. Jen, would you like to try one more time?
Yep. Let me just write it down.
Oh, I think we've
It's right on the
actually got a
board.
potential motion up on the screen.
All Hamilton Wenham Regional School District employees are required to be fully vaccinated with an FDA-approved or emergency use authorized COVID-19 vaccine by November 15th, 2021. This policy is subject to all documented legal exemptions. Employees who are granted exemption shall be subject to additional mitigation strategies. The superintendent will be tasked with implementing appropriate procedures to implement and enforce this mandate.
Jen, did you mean to say November?
I read what's up on the board.
I know. Did you mean to say November 29th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving?
I just read what was up.
I know, but I know you did. I'm just wondering, though, whether you meant to say November 29th,
Yes.
which is the
that-
Monday after Thanksgiving.
I thought that's what we had agreed on, but yes, November
Okay.
29th.
She meant
That's what she meant to say. Okay, does anyone have a second? Do I have a second on
Second.
that? A second by Julia. Okay, discussion?
So I have a question. So it's my understanding that the CDC has authorized booster shots for essential employees, and that teachers are under that specific authorization. So are we going to consider what is currently fully vaccinated to be fully vaccinated, or are we going to consider by that time it to require a booster?
That is really interesting, because I watched that really carefully this afternoon, and I wasn't clear that the teachers were definitely included. Was that?
Well, it's an industry where you are going to be exposed to lots of people who could have COVID. So that, to me, says teachers, because
Yeah.
you're working with unvaccinated people, so.
Can I say something?
Julia.
I thought it was only the elderly and people that were at health risk, and they were trying to prevent people that could be potentially healthy from getting the booster so fast, even if they are working in a hospital.
I just
So-
read the thing from the CDC.
Right, and
that
I-
said
right, I-
essential.
I have the
I will also add that, at least my information is that from the CDC is because that only applies to Pfizer. Because
That is also correct.
Correct, so that would, right, it's a great question about whether if you were vaccinated with Pfizer more than 6 months ago, and you're a teacher, That's a great question.
So according to the CDC website, they actually rejected the plan that would require nursing home staff, people who live or work in prisons, homeless shelters, frontline health workers, unpaid caregivers, and other essential workers. That got voted down 9-6. So the current plan is people age 65 or older and nursing home residents.
I think we could put this on the table, like, we need to revisit this clearly as we get more data.
You mean the question of boosters?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think it's a good question, but just speaking obviously for myself, I think we should pass this tonight, but I do think that this is an important question we should constantly be revisiting as the science changes.
And as I think this conversation for me showed that it's not quite clear exactly what the booster decision, I mean, it's still evolving, clearly. Okay. Other discussion of the motion that's on the table there? Michelle Horgan?
I'm okay with the motion, just I had some questions for.
Say it again?
I had some questions for Superintendent Tracy about stats, but I can wait if.
Regarding implementation?
Nope, numbers of the staff, percentages as it relates to numbers.
Okay. Do you feel like you can wait on that, or do you feel like it relates to your decision here?
I can wait.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor as the motion on the motion? That is 6 in favor, and the motion passes unanimously of the members present. Thank you very much, everyone, for a great discussion on a difficult topic.
Can I have a clarifying question?
Yes? Michelle?
So we consider people who volunteer in the school to be employees, and they have to get, the fingerprinting? Are we going to consider people who volunteer in the school to be employees?
Superintendent Tracy?
You could certainly add that to the process. I think it's important if they're coming into the school like any employee, which they do as volunteer coaches or volunteer librarians, then I think it's important to add that factor.
So I think that's something that was not covered, because it said employees, and those people are not employees. So.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the MOA with the regional agreement. And is Michelle going to take it from here?
Yep.
Michelle, I'm so grateful that you're going to be willing to give us a little information and background on the regional agreement. Thank you very much. And I'm turn it over to you.
All right. So.
Can I ask you to move your mic closer or something?
Yep.
I usually am able to hear you, but today, no.
Okay. So we've received, let's go back. So there's been a lot of discussion on the time that I've been on the school committee about the regional agreement. A lot of it has focused on finances and how the finances are distributed. And last fall, there was a request by Hamilton for us to talk about the regional agreement, but we had agreed that that was not something that was in our ability to do last year, and that we would revisit that in the fall. So here we are revisiting that. So the regional agreement really only talks about four things. One is how to run and get elected, and the other one is how do we allocate costs, what is the budget timeline, and how do you change the regional agreement. So there's two paths to changing the regional agreement. One is for the school committee to vote by majority to propose an amendment, and the other is by a petition of 10% of the registered voters of one of the towns. So that's the process. So if we wanted to change the regional agreement, we have the authority to do that on our own. Or if residents wanted to do that, they would need to gather 10% of the voters from their town. Things that in the past we have heard that everybody agrees upon is that the process for getting nominated is a little bit odd and unusual, and that really should be handled by the town clerk, and potentially the town clerk in your specific town, depending on what we were to decide. So that seems to be pretty universally agreed upon. The regional agreement's a little weird because there used to be different ways of voting, and they tried to be flexible around that, and actually one of the ways that is listed in there is not actually legal at this point. So if you were going to update the regional agreement, that would be one thing you would want to do, is not have the ability to have the separate election. It all has to be done on one day. The important thing to remember is no matter when the election is held, the town is responsible for paying for that. There's a few things that should be addressed there, such as the elementary school leases. We do have that coming up. Allocating costs, so at one time, operating cost and capital cost were allocated differently. We have gone beyond that point, so there's no more capital that is under the old system, but yet that system is still talked about in the regional agreement. So if you were to update it, you would probably just want to remove that and go with what the current is. Currently, cost is following so the state has an allocation method, and then we have an alternate allocation method, which is actually rather common, which is based on a rolling average of assessment. And ours is currently 3 years. It's been batted around for at least 2 decades that we would move to a 5-year rolling average. Most recently, we've heard some things like number of households. However, that's difficult to count. Residency, that's also difficult to count because we have 2 educational institutions in both towns, and that's sort of difficult to determine, like, what is residency. Let's see. Then there's the committee budget timeline, which is, I would say if you read it, then you were to map it out. Reasonable people could disagree of what it says. And by reasonable people, I would say myself and Larry Schwartz had quite a heated conversation about what this meant. And we came to an understanding, which has then come to be sort of like what's accepted. And that is that 75 days prior to town meeting, the school committee approves a tentative budget. Sometime between 75 and 60 days prior to town meeting, there's a hearing. 45 days prior to the town meeting, that we hold a hearing and approve a final budget. State law says that that budget has to be approved no later than March 31st. However, you know, that would be if we had a town meeting that was like late in, you know, late June or something like that. So these deadlines apply sooner. Let's see. And then the last thing was about changing the regional agreement. So as you know, we've received this letter in August from one of the member towns that discusses some things that they're interested in discussing. So I think it would be up to the committee to put forward a proposal, if that is what we so choose, since it's really us that are the only people who can change it, or 10% of the voters who signed some sort of a petition. And that has happened before. There has been, there's an update in the regional agreement that was a change that people wanted to do. So it's now up to us to think about, you know, are there things we want to change? There certainly are some cosmetic things that could be changed, and there are this thing about the voting that I think is in agreement that could be changed. But is there bandwidth to do that this year? And is it something that's going to, move the district forward? So, is there questions you want to ask? I do have other things, but they aren't, they're nitpicky things. They're not necessarily.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate you doing that. And I'm thinking that there are questions. People have questions? Anna?
I'm gonna try not to do what I often do, which is to get too far into the weeds too quickly. So I'll try to avoid that. Not knowing the history, like Michelle or David, I'm sure, or even Principal Tracy, Superintendent Tracy. There's some other things in here that just strike me as really odd and missing. There's no mention, and maybe this is my ignorance, but do we not lease the middle and high school? Do we own?
We do not. We own it.
We own those.
We own them, yep.
So, there's some things that are talked about that I'm not sure that we do. The operational audit caught my eye. So,
That was a one-time thing done by a 10% signature.
So when you say cosmetic fixes, would it be to take out some of these things that clearly just don't apply at the moment? And the section on the 9 to the 7 and then another election to the 7,
Correct.
that is bananas. Like that entire section, I can't believe was
Right, and there
written.
is still points where it talks about 9 members. There are cosmetic things to be changed, and one of those revised dates was cosmetic changes, where they just went through and everywhere where it said kindergarten to 12, they changed it to pre-K to 12, because
Yeah.
we had changed our district structure.
So I guess being someone who really values document vanity, as much as I like to call it, like it bothers me that this agreement is so full of things that are just not right. So I'm in favor of sort of looking at those cosmetic issues, and I think there's some valid points to this. I do think the election process seems flawed, and it's strange that the clerks are not really running that show. I think those things are there. So I guess the question I have procedurally is, and I'll just say this, I am not at all opposed to reopening the agreement to have a conversation with the towns about what we need to fix and why. But I guess the thing that I'm not entirely understanding is, would the towns then be looking for us to draft those changes? Or is it simply to start a big conversation with everyone in the same room about what they would like, what we would like, and then do we all have to agree, or does final authority over what gets changed lie in our hands or the hands of 10% of the voters?
That is correct.
So we could hear their requests, and then we could decide what we want to change or not change.
That is correct.
Okay.
And there has been talk in this committee before that we can propose something at town meeting and try and sell it ourselves on how we would change it and without them. So yeah, that is certainly what was envisioned by the original regional agreement.
Michelle Horgan?
And if Wenham does not want to revisit this?
It's up to us.
Yeah, okay.
It's up to us if we want to or not. It's not up to the towns, and it's not necessarily a negotiation. Yeah.
It's not.
It is not required to be a negotiation. It would be however the committee chooses to get input, but it's up to the committee to propose the amendments, or 10% of the voters. So certainly, if one of the boards of selectmen wanted to make a proposal, gather 10% of the signatures and submit it, then that's another alternative. So
Would the committee?
that doesn't seem to be a healthy way to go about doing things, however.
If that were to come to pass, would the committee be obliged to accept those changes, or that would just mean we'd be obliged to consider them?
If they had the 10%, it would be voted on at town meeting.
Town meeting, okay. Dana, may I ask Vinnie a question?
Of course.
Mr. Leone?
You know what, Anna, can you get closer to your mic?
Sure.
We've got a fan going on.
So one of the pieces that Michelle is talking about are the budget timelines, and is you the person closest to managing the budget timelines? Are there changes that you in your capacity would also like to see as someone sort of responsible for executing this?
Not so much in regards to the timeline, but the way the assessment is calculated would be something I was interested in changing. The 3 to 5 years would be something I'm interested in doing.
Okay.
The timeline doesn't bother me as much. Increasing the time would be obviously better, but I think it's workable within the time frame that's set.
Okay.
Michelle, and I am so grateful for all that you've done, and I hate to ask you more to rely on your background knowledge, but maybe you know, in the past, when changes were made from the school committee, do you have a sense of whether that was done through a subcommittee, through the entire committee? Do you have a sense of how that was done?
So when they did the cosmetic thing, that I think was done through a subcommittee, because it was Don Gallant and Daisha working on that. I don't remember for sure on when they changed the number of committee members. I remember the vote, but I feel like the vote at the full committee level, that there was work done by somebody else ahead of time. But I couldn't say for sure. I don't recall if it was assigned to a specific group or not.
Okay. And, the intent here is to, I think we've actually done well with having just a preliminary conversation without pressure for action this evening. I think it's good to have a conversation like this so we can get clarity. And that was, something I'd just be interested in really thinking about, because it's difficult to imagine how the full committee would really dive into an agreement like this. That's just my 2 cents. Okay. Anyone else with questions?
I can also say that MARS, the Massachusetts Association of Regional School Committees, does do this kind of thing. If you want to review your regional agreement, the last go around they gave us a bunch of assessment data, and Jean Lee really dug into that. And honestly, that was his thing, the assessment stuff. So he knows more about that than I can remember or recall. But that is a resource that's available if we were to.
So that's a resource for sort of assessing what you might need or what might be beneficial in your regional agreement.
Or what's different, what you do different. I mean, you may think your regional agreement is, all that. And they might say, well, it's got some of that, but it's also got those, raspberry-filled chocolates, and they're not so good.
Okay.
Because they're not. The creamies are disgusting.
Anna.
Dana, this is a question for, I guess, sort of a point of information. Tonight, are you looking for a vote on whether or not the committee wants to entertain changes as one item, and then secondarily, a vote from the committee about how we would structure going about doing that? Is that the objective, or are you wanting to wait on that for another meeting?
So this evening, I do not anticipate any kind of a vote.
Okay.
But in the long term, I think those probably are the questions. Does the committee have an appetite for diving into this? If so, how would we want to structure that? And I would look to Michelle to see whether you agree that those would be the questions for the committee.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we know that some people have questions. They've sent us a letter. The question is, do we have the bandwidth to do it? And do we agree that there's a need? And if we agree with both of those, then we should find the way. If we don't agree with both of those, then we have to decide, what do we do about that? Do we create bandwidth? Do we ignore? What do we do? So.
Yeah. And I'll have to say, this was very helpful to me, because I don't think I fully understood that it is, I think I didn't really understand that it is solely with us to make the,
I mean, we can get input from whoever. I mean, we could have a forum if we wanted to. We could knock on doors, door to door, to get the information. But it's either for us to propose or 10% of the voters of one town. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I make the point that 10%, that's a fairly low bar. So I mean, if we ultimately make the decision that we're not willing to, or don't have the bandwidth to do it, it wouldn't be hard for the people to get 10% of the votes and do it without any of our input. So, I mean, just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it's unclear to me what that would really look like, right? Because it would have to be a very specific proposal in order for them, right? And my impression is that this is really more of what Michelle just outlined, which is, looking through the agreement and identifying various areas. That's my understanding of more what people are looking to, that yes, they have various specific concerns, but it's not something that would be easy to explain in a one-liner.
I mean, they would need legal counsel, and because even once it passes town meeting, it has to go to the DESE and be approved. And even when that audit thing was put in, there was quite a lengthy review and a lot of question about whether or not it would be approved by the DESE, and ultimately it was, but it took a while. So, it's not like saying, we'd like to change the regional agreement to this. I mean, they would have to have they would need to get some legal advice on how to do that, so.
I guess, do we feel like we need...
It is a lot of people. It's like probably about 250 in Wenham and
maybe close to 800
in Hamilton.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, it's a lot of people to trust me, as someone who gathered 250 signatures to have something put on a town meeting, it took a long time.
Dana, I don't know
Anna?
if this, I don't know, just in the interest of time, I feel like, to me, the right thing to do here is to table this for another meeting, but with the idea that we go off and think about the questions that are before us. Are we interested? Do we have bandwidth? And how would we achieve it? I do think those are the right questions.
So that was, you read my mind, but my question before I think we need to move on was, does anyone have a specific question that they would want answered, much like we did with the vaccines? We asked if there any information that you feel like the superintendent or I can seek out, or Michelle, since she knows, can seek out prior to a next conversation on this.
I'd like to know if Hamilton and Wenham could come to an agreement on the changes that they want made and spell them out more clearly so that they're less amorphous.
So would that look like...
I would say no, they won't be able to do that.
Or could we specifically ask Hamilton why? What are the reasons that why they wanted it to, aside from it is overdue, it's 6 years overdue, but why?
I mean, I actually believe that a review of the regional agreement is probably in order.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Whether or not we have the bandwidth to do it right now, and whether or not we can, make enough changes to make it worth our while, I don't know. Hamilton is looking for some very big structural changes that are going to require a lot of work if you wanted to do them. So I'm not sure we have the bandwidth. Reviewing the regional agreement to see if it works, I think is probably within our bandwidth. Doing a structural change in how the committee operates, I don't know if we have that. And if that was something that both towns wanted, then we'd probably have to work on it. I'm not hearing that that's something that both towns are ready, willing, and able to do.
So
where are we hearing, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm just clarification. Michelle, how do we know that that's what Hamilton wants? I didn't totally.
Because they sent us a letter.
I know, but it was hard to read that that's fully what they wanted. I mean, I read that letter as we have major changes to discuss, but I kind of agree with Jen, I wasn't clear exactly what it is that they want from us. But they want a conversation, which I agree. I feel like having a conversation is especially in the interest of trying to build on our relationships, right? There's been a lot of conversation about building a partnership and having an open relationship. So I feel like, I'm trying to imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, right? Let's say we had something we wanted to discuss and we wrote a nice letter and we put ourselves together I would hope that our fellow boards would give us the courtesy at least of a conversation about it. So I'm definitely interested in hearing sort of what it is, but I do think Michelle is right that, you know, the bandwidth issues are real, and we have a lot of work going on. The district's doing a lot of work. We have a new superintendent. We have, 3 or 4 major community initiatives right now that are overlapping. So I think the bandwidth, to me, it's not a question of are we willing to have the conversation. I think we have to. You know, we're all part of the same puzzle. But I do fully agree that whether or not we engage in actual reopening it, to me, depends a little bit on what the expectation is and how much work it will take. So I agree with Michelle on that.
I also think that word reopening is it's not true.
Say it
It's not true.
What's not
We're
true?
not renegotiating the agreement. It would be, would we propose amendments? We're not opening the agreement to be renegotiated. That's not what we're talking about. So I think if we could stop using that word, because I think that word confuses people about what exactly might be going on. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to come to the tables if we decide to, with specific amendments to propose.
And
Okay.
how we would determine that
Okay.
is up to us.
Okay.
How we solicit the information is up to us. Yep.
Yeah, so, it does sound like, does it feel like we might need to get a little more information from Hamilton? Does that feel real? So we can do that, get a little bit of clarity, have a conversation. I'm not sure, do we need to vote on who's going to do that, or do we just want to?
Who's the liaison to the Board of Selectmen? Is it you, or is it?
I think it's me, I think.
Okay.
I think. Anna, is it you or me?
I think it was you.
I think it's me. Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk with them and bring back more information. And I'm happy to put this on another agenda with an action step. And I did it purposefully not to have an action step today because I think it's important just to have these conversations. Okay, are we ready to move on?
We are. Could you, at some point, could someone recirculate that original letter from the Hamilton Select Board? I'd like to read it again. And I thought I had
From Lori
it.
Wilson, and it was around August 3rd to the 7th or 8th.
It was around what?
Sometime between August 3rd and the 7th or 8th. It's from Lori Wilson.
Right, that's why you're having trouble finding it, because she was.
She's Joe's new
okay,
assistant.
I have
right?
it.
She
I
also
have it
works
here.
for some board there, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And a former chair of this committee.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for your work on that, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Can't find it.
Okay. Moving on. We have a request for a .2 Miles River math position.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a request of a .2 math teacher at Miles River Middle School that will be used to cover an IEP change to a smaller, two students actually, to a smaller classroom setting. So it was not in place, but it will be in place, so we do need to create this position to meet the needs of the students.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do you want to make a motion and then we can do the questions?
You want to make the motion first? Yep. Jen, can you make a motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation of Eric Tracy to hire a .2 FTE math teacher at Miles River Middle School.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. All right, discussion? Michelle?
Sorry. Do you anticipate having to fill in this position easily, or you?
We actually have somebody
do? Okay.
to do it, which is extremely helpful right now.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Question, I'm good.
Jen? Oh, you're good? No, Anna?
Similar question. So it's somebody who's already teaching at the school, or this be a new person coming in?
This would be a new person,
But they're willing to do only the .2.
correct.
Michelle Bailey, did you have a question? No?
Oh, no, I just want to know where he found that person, that's all.
I can't hear you.
I just want to know where he found that person. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
He can't divulge your secret.
I know he can't.
You teach him Foster, he's not telling you anything, sorry.
We lived that, Mr. Hovey pulled that one off.
Do we anticipate that this would be something that would be ongoing and built into next year's budget?
I would say it's going to depend on the IEP, given that they're reviewed fairly consistently. It's probable that would have to be built into the budget for the long term. These are kids that are in the middle school level that we intend to keep with us.
Okay.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And that is 6 in favor, and the motion is, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Tracy, I think you have an ESSER grant update next for us.
I do. Let me get right to that. So I wanted to update the committee. I just kind of took this on Wednesday, so I wanted to update the committee as to our current position in really trying to figure out how we spend our ESSER 3 monies. In looking at the local superintendent's listservs, this has been difficult for superintendents because there is a different restriction on ESSER 3 than on ESSER 1 or 2, and that's a 20% commitment to learning loss. That is, as I've been going through the grant document, very specifically built into the grant document, so it's not something you can get around. You really can't build the grant out until you can identify those specific things. And currently, we're looking at the expenditures that are listed on here. Actually, let me back up. We did have to, as a requirement of the grant, reach out to stakeholders, local stakeholders, and we did reach out to the ones that are listed here. Some we got more info than others. Some it was really, you know, we got as little info as from 2 or 3 people in a group to 50 or 80 people in a group. So we asked the leadership team recently to go through the data from the stakeholders and went through an exercise of breaking people up, each having a stakeholder group, identifying the top 3 issues that popped up for each stakeholder group, and then asked them also to identify top 3s within their own schools. Admin is one of the stakeholder groups that is involved in this. And we merged that information together in the meeting and then reprioritized the list to see what came up the most. And the top, kind of rising to the top, if you will, was social emotional learning and support. And then certainly the learning loss, meeting the needs of kids that have identified learning loss. And they could be kids in any grade level. It's not specific to any grade level. So we've tried to spread the wealth a little bit, if you will, here by listing out the following expenditures with, there is a balance left over, and that balance is still in discussion because we really need to come up with a targeted program or opportunity for our Ls. Our L population is rising, and I think it's important for us to meet that need, and it clearly is something that, you know, since taking over on Wednesday, it's really in the forefront of a lot of what the government grants are asking for, some targeted interventions for kids with disabilities, Ls, low income, et cetera. So I think it's important for us to do that. We just need to really have a better conversation with Stacy Busick, who does this for our district, and also the people that we currently employ, to see what the best approaches will be, the best research-based approaches, which is what the expectation of the grant is. So that's why you have the extra monies left over. And I should note that there are a couple of positions on here that say FY23. We have created those positions under ESSER 2. So this is the intention for us, is to carry these positions in for another year. We don't see learning loss and social emotional issues being solved within the next 9 months completely. So it's important for us to continue to carry those within the grant structure because they're not within the regular budget. So I just want to make sure that was clear on those, that we have to spend the grant by September 2024. So it gives us the opportunity to do that in the management of the budget. The next steps from here will be really identifying the ways in which we're evaluating, assessing kids, and checking out, what levels of learning loss kids may have at different levels, and then identifying the, quote, research-based methods for meeting the needs of those kids, and that will get built into the grant when we submit it.
Okay. Questions? Anna?
So I have a few specific questions just to help understand the thinking on a couple of these line items. So I'll just go through them, not all of them. Some of them are pretty straightforward. What's the thinking behind the iPads at the elementary and middle school level? Are those things that we're short on now that we're not in a remote learning setting? I'm a little bit surprised to see that level of investment there.
Yeah, so we are short. We do need iPads across those levels for a number of reasons, for assessment reasons, but also last year, the 8th grade had iPads, and they want to continue to grow that one-to-one program down and through. So this purchase would give us opportunity for new iPads and also the ability to spread out some of the older equipment that we have. We did have a substantial amount of loss of equipment when we gave it out during COVID, during our remote times, and it was mostly wear and tear, if you will. It wasn't really, we can't identify something that was purposeful. It's mostly these devices were at the end of life, and buttons started coming off, and CPUs started failing, processors started failing. So there is a number of equipment to be replaced. And I'll give you an example. We use Chromebook carts at the elementary school, and each of the Chromebook carts generally house 30 Chromebooks. And right now, we're missing between 9 and 7 in each of the 7 carts that we have out at the elementary schools. So there are a number of Chromebooks still at the middle school that we can shift down with this purchase and backfill those carts so that they can meet the needs of the kids.
Okay. Moving down the list, I'll just say I'm gratified to see the DEI audit being paid. There was a big argument about that last year, and I said it should be in the budget, and lo, here it is in the budget. So I feel somewhat vindicated that we're actually paying for it. I'm curious about the .1 FTE elementary specialist.
Sure. So there was a move made. I'm going to say in the second. Vinny can probably help me with this. In the second week of September, where the curriculum leader position at the middle school, high school position for health and PE was open. Mm-hmm. The only person who applied, well, there were 2 people who applied. One withdrew and left one person who was an elementary phys ed and health person. We did grant her that position, but under the way that the curriculum leaders are structured, we had to reduce the numbers of periods she was working. So we were able to take that time and spread it back out through the other teacher at the elementary level.
Okay.
And the balance was that .1.
Okay, got it. I'm assuming MTRS, multi-tier reading system, multi-tier something or other like that?
That's teachers' retirement.
Oh, thank you.
That's a requirement of those hires.
Okay, perfect. This is what I asked. So the other thing that I'm not seeing on here, and I guess I asked this question a couple meetings ago, was about elementary school music. And at the time, Superintendent Banos indicated that hiring situation had been resolved, but I'm not sure that it has, because word on the street is that we still don't have elementary music at all of the schools. So I guess the question is, in terms of learning loss, music was something that really suffered last year. I would say of all the specials, that was something that the kids really didn't have. And then at the elementary level, now we have a staffing issue. So I guess one question I have, is there any idea that we might spend money on elementary music enrichment? Maybe if we're not able to find someone to fill the position, which would be obviously more ideal, but could we do something to try to get our elementary kids some sort of music enrichment, which to me is part of social emotional learning. But I even asked just last night at curriculum night about the chorus program, right? Mrs. Clark always ran an amazing chorus program. That's unclear if that's going to happen this year at any level. So I'm feeling like if we're going to talk about learning loss, I would love to include music enrichment, especially at the elementary level, which really hasn't had music for going on almost 3 years now in some ways.
So, glad you brought that up. Music is high on my agenda always. I know the value, both within my own family and through the school system. So I had a conversation with Mr. Ferrera at the Winthrop, Katie Simcoe at the high school, Eric Fecky at the high school, and really talked about how to best utilize their skills. The one issue that we ran into that I am trying to figure out is the change in the buses. This is going to sound weird, but we had transfer buses last year that moved these kids when they went to, say, the Bucher. They would all the chorus kids would meet at the Bucher, and then when they were done, be bused to their school in the morning. The transfer buses don't exist this year, so what I need to do is figure out which buses are going to which exact points, and then try to utilize that system. I just had these conversations with them because our music people are anxious to get our elementary levels running, and I think it's important. And you know, in those conversations, they worry about kids losing out on that experience. You know, last year a lot of kids missed out, and they're currently in the 5th grade, and there's a lot of education that occurs both by bringing in outside teachers as part of the program, but then also organizing them into concerts and choirs and things like that. So it is my intention to get it back up and running. I think we can do it once we can hire the position that's still open at the Bucher School.
They just filled it.
Oh, okay. So they just filled the Bucher position. Thank you, Vinny. Then the piece is, how do we move kids like we used to with the transfer buses? So that's my issue to solve, and I intend to solve that because I do believe it's an important part of the program.
Great. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay. All right, I think we're good on that. Unless there's anything you're looking else from us on that.
I just wanted you to be aware of where we were.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up on the agenda is we have a review and data on the face covering policy.
I'm going to put that data up, Bert.
You're going to put it up there?
Yeah,
Okay.
is that okay?
Yeah, great. And is this updated?
So I did not
Okay.
get into the habit of, I don't want to get into the habit of changing the agenda over and over and over, so I chose not to do that. I don't think that's a good practice, but I can fill in the 2 blanks that we have because we actually got the data. This was posted Friday afternoon. We got the data Monday at 5. So I have a tracking sheet that's shared with the 2 towns. And I was just waiting for Hamilton to put the data in, which she's been bombed and was able to put it in. So on the 9/16, the new cases for the last 7 days. On 9/16, the number is 4. And then on the other open, excuse me, I open this again, just close it on myself. Let me open.
It's like you cut and
There we
pasted
go.
in there. That was strange.
Dropped it in my own document.
Very strange.
Okay.
I didn't know you could
And then
do
on the
that.
other side, the total positive tests is 15, and the number would be 1.07%. Everything else remains the same as of this date.
13, 9 plus 4.
I'm showing 15 in the last 14 days, There is some overlap. That's one thing I noticed with some of the numbers in the charting. Because of the 14-day spread, there is some overlap.
And I will just say that back a long time ago, when I was on that COVID response team, I did experience that there were often slight differences in numbers just due to the way things got reported, the day it got reported,
Yep.
complications around the way the state reports, so the numbers often didn't add up. It was actually a real challenge because people would often say it didn't add up. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a slight difference. Okay, do we have questions about the data?
I just have a point of order. Did we mean to skip over A?
I think B is to inform A.
Say that one more
I
time.
think B is to inform A.
Yeah,
Correct,
correct.
correct.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Got it.
Thank you, yes.
Also, Superintendent Tracy, make sure you hit undo, because that change
Yeah.
has
Yep.
changed the 4 agenda.
But right now.
Got it.
Okay, so, I'm gonna get back to A. So, when we passed the face covering policy, we asked that we would revisit and discuss at every meeting and ask for this kind of data. So I guess my question, I guess, I really appreciate the data, and I would also just, if you could provide us, do you have any sort of window into how the face covering masking is going at school in terms of compliance and?
Sure, for the most part, in talking with the principals, we're really doing, the kids are really doing well with it. You know, other issues, yes, you know, and certainly teachers don't want to spend time arguing with it, but I think, you know, the 1 or 2 issues that I ran into personally, kids were, boom, they put it right back up. You know, the older kids tend to travel with it down below their nose, so there is a lot of reminding going on, but they've been really good about it. There hasn't been any pushback or any kind of argument over it. So I would say for the greater school system, really well.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Anna has one.
Anna?
Not so much a question, just something to make sure we might want to clear up. The face covering policy that's linked to this agenda is not the most current one. If you recall, in the meeting on August 19th, we voted on a new policy where we took off a lot of things and we added some criteria that the HWA had wanted. So if you go to the August 19th agenda and go to the COVID mitigation exhibit, there's actually an updated version of this. We took off the outside, we added a bullet about when staff are working alone in their classrooms. Is this ringing bells to other people? So just so the public is aware, I don't know what we can do about it now. Maybe we need to add the exhibit from the prior meeting, but I want the public to know that the EBCFA that they're looking at that was passed in May of last year is not the most current version. And those were significant changes, so.
I'm just trying to look at that, Anna, thank you.
I think it was pages like 5 and 6 of the exhibit from the 19th meeting.
Yeah.
It's the same number. It's still EBCFA, but a different version of it.
Okay, I'm not able to multicast right now.
I'll follow up with you after the meeting to make sure you know what we might need to add, or just put it in the minutes maybe.
Yeah, I think that's important to make sure we have the correct exhibit up.
I think an important thing, like you said, Anna, and yeah, it's the old policy, but the important thing about the new policy is that the superintendent would have emergency powers, or we granted some sort of discretion.
Correct. Well, there were several.
Yeah.
There were several changes that.
So I think it's important, of course, for the public to know that, you know, the Massachusetts, the DESE guidelines on masking still stand through October 1st. So I'm not sure when we're going to look at it again. Are we looking at it again in October Did we agree to look at it every
Voted
meeting?
every meeting.
Right, we agreed to look
Okay, I
at
can't
it
remember if it was
at-
every other
right,
meeting.
we agreed to look at it at every
Okay,
meeting.
okay.
And I think it's a really important point. I think that the October 1st date will produce questions, depending on what DESI does or doesn't do on that date. I don't know, Eric, if you have any insights into what they may or may not do.
We're all waiting and clamoring for their usually last-minute message, so I'm
Or
Last minute.
Friday afternoon after the deadline passes,
Right.
probably would be my guess on the
Yeah.
2nd.
It's usually when they send out the Commissioner's Weekly comes out on Friday at 5 o'clock. Usually right around there is
Exactly.
when I get it in my email.
So, yeah, so that the policy, which I am very sorry that I just not able to multitask, but the policy that we did pass, nothing will, if, for example, DESI were to change their guidance on October 1st, our policy will, nothing will be triggered automatically. Our policy will remain in place and we would need to meet.
Right.
Absolutely, that would be an important topic for discussion if there were a change from DESI. It would be, I would believe, under this item on the agenda, it would be discussed here. Michelle Horgan, you look like you
No,
have
I'm
some.
just agreeing with you.
Okay.
That our next meeting after October 1st would be the 7th. So
Seventh,
that's
yeah.
when we would,
That's when, right. So, Jen?
Can I just make the point that it seems like the masks are working? We have 0 cases in the school. That's great. I mean, every single university I work with is around 1.5% positivity rate.
Can you knock on wood? Like, really?
Yeah, knock on some wood there. Yes, Eric?
Yeah. I mean, looks like it's working.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we do have this week one case in one of the elementary schools due to, picked up in the pool testing, which is great. And that is it. That is all we have right now.
And that is a tribute to our students, our families, and our teachers and staff who are
Absolutely.
doing the hard work to keep that going. So, yeah, good point. Thank you. Michelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious as to how we're doing on, the stock of PPE. You don't go through a day necessarily without a mask breaking, getting ruined, sneezed in, whatever. Is that an issue?
It hasn't come up as an issue at all.
Okay.
And I've been in every school in the last week at least 2 or 3 times and haven't heard that, even just chatting with kids, talking with kids or anything like that. It came up quite often last year. Well, for me as a high school principal last year, it did come up quite often with kids, but I haven't gotten that feedback from students or parents.
All right. Anything else on that? Okay, thank you. Next up is a superintendent update and looking at our district goals.
Thank you very much. Pull up that document. So I wanted to give a brief update of the goals that we've set at the beginning of the year. And I think it's important to continually update this for the committee and for the community so that they are aware of how things are going. So in our building a district vision goal, which is a portrait of the graduate right now, we have sent out invitations to community, staff, and high school students. We've asked families at open houses to participate. Several of the principals have made announcements. I have, before this meeting, put at each of your seats a folder with a few flyers in it and would ask that you give them out to people within our community who may not be school people. We have generated a list of people within the community who are not school people through people that we've connected with, and I individually emailed all of them to invite them. These are business owners and people that are both in both communities. And we're set to run our first meeting on October 6th, and that'll be the first of 4 meetings. And the DEI goal, right now on the 22nd, we reviewed the RFP for equity audit. DEI Advisory Committee did the interest surveys for scoops that included scope and pricing. Leadership team, including myself and Jennifer Clifford, met with a consultant, Equity Journey Partners, to determine the actual PD dates when it would occur. We have to do this in conjunction with our PDC, the committee that manages professional development for the district now. That was new for this year. And then we also did the Title IX training. Our most recent one was done with the leadership team on the 15th. And also posted the Title IX training on the website as we were directed to do by DESE. Improving teaching and learning with the MTSS structure. The two levels, elementary and secondary, are in two different places. Elementary has started with their MTSS work. Provided training to the literacy teaching assistants by the district literacy intervention specialist. This included assessment training and the creation of multi-sensory materials and resources that are used at each of the schools. So what they're trying to do is make sure that everybody has equitable everything and that everybody understands how these things function within our schools. The PD time has been mostly focused on unpacking the pre-K to 5 foundational reading standards, specifically noting skills that are taught at for each standard and at grade level, which has been a really good conversation with our elementary teachers. And then there's study time built into this for Simple View of Reading and Scarborough's Rope, and that's something that they've been working on with the staff to kind of build out the reading portion of this. The secondary is a little bit different because their focus, if you remember, was initially on bringing back the inclusive practices, and they were starting from the beginning of the school year. The weekly curriculum leader meetings, they had the initial discussion. They had department meetings to bring it to their departments, and the departments meet 6 through 12 at the secondary. They have PD time for department work in curriculum and with the inclusive practices on September 15th and the 22nd. And then they also revisited and emphasized the use of the inclusive practices at each department meeting so that there's an understanding of the initial inclusive practices, but also that we will be looking for them in walkthroughs as we do our observations of teachers, and we wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page with that, and that people understood that's really kind of a high priority for us in our evaluation this year. And then we're building professional practice and student learning goals at the secondary level that are tied to the inclusive practices. And essentially what we're doing is the curriculum leaders developed a set of professional learning goals and student learning goals that teachers can pick from. And those are specific to inclusive practices, so not every teacher is coming up with their own goals. This way, there's a goal already crafted that meets our expectations and kind of the requirements of what we're doing, and people don't have to struggle to come up with their own goal if they want to, include something from the inclusive practices, and certainly the curriculum leaders and secondary administrators will certainly look deeper at that when they meet with their teachers to do their goal setting for the evaluation process over the next month plus a little month, 6 weeks. Foundational work to build high quality athletic and learning facilities. We scheduled a meeting, it's coming up on the 27th for the athletics facilities improvement project. That will be coming up on 9/27. Existing conditions for building envelope. Tom is in the process of collecting that information. And then received some preliminary results via web conference for energy usage across the district. And then received preliminary findings of life cycle assessment for our equipment, mechanical equipment. So that's where we are with our goals at this point, and we're just keeping a running document. I've asked people to update weekly, people that are in charge of those groups, and so that we can keep kind of everybody on the same pace, but also so that everybody can see what everybody else is doing. We want to make it as transparent as possible.
I have a question. Julia.
Superintendent Tracy, I have a question about the DEI Advisory Committee.
Yes.
So it looks like you're still looking for members, is that? true. And I know I've heard from a couple of community members that apparently applied but never heard anything. So I don't know if it's been selected or if it's still rolling.
Can I ask Stacy, who leads that group?
Yes.
to Put her on the spot? I see her shaking her head out there.
Should have left early.
I'm here, right? So the DEI leadership team met yesterday, and we've gone through the interest surveys and looked at all of the persons who have applied. We have our committee. We'll be sending out emails next week. We just need to craft our emails. And for those who were not chosen for the committee, we also want to encourage them to participate in the surveys and forums that will happen once we have our consultant in place and we start digging into that work.
Okay. Any idea of how big the committee might be?
It's a committee of 12 members, plus there's 4 of us on the DEI leadership team.
So you'll be letting people know that they were or were not selected next week?
Yes, yes. And when we do that, we also want to work in conjunction with the consultant that gets finally chosen around coordinating dates for them to come in and work with the DEI Advisory Committee as well. So we just want to make sure we have some things in place first.
Thank you. Anna?
Stacy, don't go away. I have a couple questions on that too. So, so I'm a little bit surprised that it's only 12 people, and I'm curious to know what was the criteria used to select people or not select people, and do we have assurance that the composition of the DEI committee is in fact diverse? How do we know?
We worked on the diversity piece. We looked at responses to our survey. We also ensured we had a cross-representation. So we have students on the committee, we have community members, and then we have representation from each level, elementary, middle, and high school.
But do we have an understanding that we are actually going to have, non-majority voices on that committee?
We believe we've done that based on how persons responded to the survey questions.
Okay.
So we looked at that closely.
So sort of related to this, and I sent an email to Superintendent Banyos and Superintendent Tracy a while ago, but there was some concern about the time slot chosen. And I've heard from a lot of people they would have loved to participate, but it really is a bad time. I can understand why the time was chosen to work with teachers as well. But is there going to be any additional public engagement or like an evening listening session or something like that to capture people that could not make a 3 p.m. meeting? Because I heard from a lot of people they wanted to do it, but that time was just not going to work. How are we going to engage those people?
They'll be engaged through surveys and through forums. So we plan to hold community forums and forums with staff and students. So through that process, there'll be engagement.
Okay, and will those be at evening hours?
We can create evening hours for those, absolutely.
Okay, I guess I would encourage us to do that. Can I go back to Superintendent Tracy before I give up my microphone? The facilities and fields, when are we next going to hear about our application to the MSBA?
We actually got a confirmation, not on the elementary MSBA, but there was something submitted to the state for the roof at the high school.
For the high school, yeah.
And that was not approved for now. We didn't meet the number of years on their threshold. So they're using their threshold is 29 years this year, and we are at 25 years. And as you may know, that threshold changes based on the applications and the pool of money. So that changes, it's gone down as low as 25, and it's up as high as 30, so we'll continue to apply for that.
And do we know when we'll hear about the elementary application?
I think it's December, Vinny? Yeah, December. That was a conversation we had with Tom 2 days ago.
Okay, great, thank you.
Jen?
I love the fact that we're incorporating parents in the community, but are we also making an effort to incorporate students? Because they're really the ones on the front lines for this DEI project.
There are students on the committee. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Stacy, for being willing to step up and answer questions on the spot. I appreciate it. Other questions?
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
We're done.
Yep, go ahead.
I also wanted to announce that Hamilton was awarded a Green Communities Competitive Grant recently. That includes us in the school system, so Tom wanted people to know that Winthrop Elementary School will receive an upgrade in weatherization, windows, doors, things like that. There'll be Winthrop Elementary School will look at some of the energy systems and do improvements on the energy system. School administration building will have an LED retrofit as part of this program, and then the school administration will get some much needed weatherization, try and seal some of those openings. And then, you know, as those projects move along, they have to be completed by, I think, the end of December. We'll bring back the information and let you know how they're proceeding.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I just have one more question.
Julia?
Are the members of all of these different groups, like the World Language Group, the DEI Advisory Committee, the Portrait of Graduate, are they public? Like, are they going to be announced who they are? Just wonder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely put that out there. It'd be something we'd probably post on the website to say, here's a member of the DEI committee, here's the member of the Portrait of Graduate working group, design team, and then here are the members of the Portrait of Graduate working group, and including the world language, which is that's just going out tomorrow, that invitation. We're trying to spread them out a little bit so people don't get crazy from us, but yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, moving right along to committee reports. Capital Finance?
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I do want you to do it,
We met, what day was that? Wednesday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay.
We did meet, and our agenda was to elect officers, but we needed the third member of the committee, so we didn't do that. But
Okay, so
then we did our meetings, and we set our meeting agenda, and we set our timeline and goals for the year, what we want to accomplish.
Okay, great. All right, any questions for Capital Finance?
So you did elect officers, or you did not?
We did what?
You did elect officers, or you
No.
did not?
No.
Did not?
Not at this time. Our next meeting is I couldn't remember it's in here. October 13th, and we plan to do it by then or at that meeting.
Same time?
Yes.
Same
Yes.
place. And if we're lucky, minutes will be done over the weekend.
Okay. Policy.
We have not met, but we have a date. October
Okay.
25th, 6 o'clock. Everybody seems able to do it, including Dorothy, and we have a draft agenda that everyone seemed to think was fine. So the only thing I wanted to remind you about too, and I don't know if you want to deal with it or not, is the flag policy. Remember, we wanted to talk about that, and I think we were going to talk about it tonight. I'm not sure if you want to take formal action or informal action, but.
I'm sorry, did you say you're going to talk about it tonight?
Well, we had originally had a deadline
Oh, yes,
of the end of the month,
yes.
which we are not going to meet. And we sort of talked about it last time. We talked about talking about it this time. And
Oh, you know what? Yes, I guess we did talk about, I don't know that there's much to, you have a scheduled meeting and you anticipate discussing the flag policy, is
we
that
do.
correct?
It is on the draft agenda.
Okay. I don't know that there's a needed action unless someone feels like they need to make a motion. I would say.
I move that we extend the deadline for providing a flag policy to October 31st, 2021.
Do we have a second?
Can I amend that to say to the next school committee meeting, full school committee meeting after October 25th, which I believe would be November
4th.
8th?
Okay.
4th?
4th.
4th.
I'd like to, I guess, further amend it. I don't think we'll have anything after only having talked about it once on the 25th. So,
I mean, when did we make that original motion?
May
though there's been a lot of time to do that, so, I mean, I feel
Right, but I
like,
don't think there's actually been a policy subcommittee, maybe in June, Michelle? I don't remember the last time we actually met.
I don't recall either. I think we could try for October 25th. And if for some reason we can't do it, then we'll come back to the committee, but we should try for the
All right,
25th.
so your amendment was for the next school committee meeting after the 25th?
Yes, November 4th.
Okay. I don't think we've gotten a second yet on that.
we didn't.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Julia. Is there further discussion? So my understanding is that the motion would be that the policy committee would bring a flag policy for our review on or before November 4th. Okay. All those in favor? That is 5 in favor, I think. Are those opposed? 1 opposed, and the motion passes. Okay. I need to write that down. Okay.
I put it on the work plan.
Thank you. Okay. And next up, there was nothing else from policy, right?
Nope, that's it.
Next up is negotiations. I don't know if you've seen that yet, Michelle, but we had a tentative scheduled meeting with the custodial union for October 6th. We had a scheduling conflict come up today on our end, and I did reach out to them to see whether we can find another potential date for that, and I did not yet hear back from them, unless you did, Eric.
I did not yet.
Okay.
No.
That just happened today. But I do anticipate that we will find a good time and get that done. And we also have not had an opportunity with a full membership in order to vote new officers, but we will do that. Okay, any questions for negotiations? Okay. Okay, so next up is the chair's report. I think we're mostly have covered everything. I did want to report that I am the school committee representative on the Hamilton Master Planning Committee, and we did have, I don't know if any of you, I know I saw a couple of you there actually at the Shop Local event on Sunday. There was the master planning. It was, first of all, a fantastic local event. It was really just jam-packed with people. It was really great. And we had a lot of people come into the master planning tent and ask questions about master planning, which was exciting as we get started. We're really at the beginning stages. We're visioning and really asking people to get clear on, and people did this at the tent, talk about what do you want or dream of for Hamilton. This is specific to Hamilton. And what, and asking people what do they value about Hamilton. And we got some good responses. So that's that. I don't know if anyone has any questions or whether I'll be able to answer them about master planning, but I do have, we do have some tentative, just sort of introductory meetings with some members of, that's in October with Wenham Finance, there's the FinCom, and just to sort of introduce and begin conversations ahead of the budget process. I had a similar, just an introductory conversation with John McGrath, who's the new school committee liaison from the Hamilton FinCom. It was nice to meet him. And just begin to make sure that we have those lines of communication open so that we can have, it sounds to me, I was new last year, but the feedback we got was that the budget process was more transparent than it has been in the past, and we got good feedback about that. We want to make sure to continue that trend and make sure that people feel like they have, they're in the loop the whole time. Jen?
Just because you mentioned the liaison role, for those of us who volunteered to be a liaison at a specific school,
Yes.
is there something that we're supposed to be doing?
It's an excellent question. Since almost all of us have only served during complete odd times of COVID, it's a great question. Let's turn ourselves to those of us who may have been here in the before times.
So I'm the Wellness Committee liaison, and I was able to reach out to the chairperson, so that was easy for me. So I don't know.
Yeah, and if I was, when I was at Winthrop, I went to a couple of friends' meetings, and then I would just now and again email with the presidents of that group to see if there was anything that either they needed to know from us or we needed to know from them. It was nice to go to their meetings,
And I was
they
gonna
held
say,
them at night sometimes.
if I recall in the past, I believe that oftentimes a school committee member might come to a friends meeting when budget season
Yep.
to discuss, does that seem?
Yep.
I was on the opposite end of that, but
Yep.
but that might be a role. And also something that might evolve this year, yes.
I would also add that I have in the past worked with members that have come to spend some time at the school and get a tour and can really take the opportunity to see what's happening in the buildings. And I would invite every one of you to do it. I think it's important for us to make those connections. Some great stuff going on.
Yeah, and just for those members like myself that have learned this on the job recently, I will say, because I actually did go to the high school as a liaison when Eric was the principal. And I will just remind you all that it's best to make sure you make those arrangements through the superintendent. So if you do want to go into your school, if you're, make sure you check with Eric and get that arranged.
Dana, can we ask, or maybe Superintendent Tracy, could we have the liaison list updated on the website?
Yes.
Yeah, we need to.
You know them?
Yeah, I know that's,
Okay.
it's something that's been on my agenda and just hasn't gotten done. We definitely need to update the website with appropriate. We'll get it done. Okay, I think that's it for me, and I'm ready, unless people have questions, I'm ready to hear topics for future meetings. Michelle Bailey?
This is just a request, if we could just recirculate the work plan.
I'm sorry.
Resend a link up to the work plan, just
Yes.
to recirculate it. I do believe we need to, and I don't know if this transfers, appoint Eric Tracy as the North Shore Consortium representative for Hamilton Wenham. Since it was Mary Beth, it would now be Eric.
All I can say is thank goodness you're here, because
No, and then I
how
think,
would one even know that?
because we do it annually. So, but I don't know if it's by default, it moved to you, or if we need to do it.
I just met with them.
The foreign language, I'm curious about the scheduling on if that's just going out, if we're still going to meet sort of like a November timeframe. So I guess when we see the work plan, I'll know when that's scheduled.
I'm sorry, what?
It's on the website also, the deadlines for those things, I think.
No, what I'm saying is, when are we going to hear the report from the foreign language
Oh, the
thing?
foreign
'Cause
language. Oh, yes, okay.
I thought it was in November, and November's coming up, and I hadn't heard anything about it, so I was just curious. And then the vote on the MASC stuff, is that going to be the next meeting or the meeting after?
You're talking about the vote
The
for
resolutions.
On the
the
resolutions.
resolutions. Let's look, hold on.
And that may be on the work plan, too. Those are things that,
I'm not sure whether
I'm
that
having a
is
hard time finding the work plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that
I
is
would
on the
love
work
that,
plan,
too.
okay, but we definitely have, yeah, we can certainly put that on the next, we've got 2 meetings before that, so we definitely can put it on the, thank you so much for being on top of that. Okay, anyone else? Okay. All right, do you have anything else, Superintendent Juicy?
All set, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn at 9:10.
Second.
Oh,
Would it be possible to know, like, at some point in time, which TAs we are missing and how that's going to affect various district goals?
Sure,
Thank you.
I will give an update next meeting.
okay. I heard a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on adjourning? Okay, all in favor? All right, and the motion passes, it's unanimous. 9:10. Nice job, you guys.